have 275 people committed to be there.
Talk shoes.
Recorded live.
Hello.
Hey, Todd, how you doing?
Todd, are you there? Apparently we're recorded live. It must be 9 p.m. That is, say, 10 p.m. in the east.
Yeah,
or
here on
7
the West
p.m.
Coast.
over you. Yeah, you left coasters. You're so behind. You're so laid back. It's only 7 p.m. You're not intense enough.
Yeah, we have our moments.
Hey, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to Liberty Cat Talk Live. We are now on the air. Yes, we are live now. Show's being recorded live now as I speak. I was trying to call in, and for some strange reason, TalkShoe wouldn't recognize my PIN number, so I had to put in my PIN number, and I finally remember what it was, but I don't know the issue. It must be a glitch or something. So basically, we're all set to go there. So, but that having said, we got a lot to cover tonight. We got a lot to do. But before I go any further, I just want to remind my listeners to wear your liberty cap. We are freeing ourselves from the control of the state. We are freeing ourselves from the control of the Republicans and Democrats. We're fighting them tooth and nail all the time, every day, no excuses. And with that said, my partner in crime should be joining us in a second here, so we will be on the air. For those who want to call in, your number has to be very important because this is what happens for you to call into the show, and this is a very important show, so this is a very important show tonight because we didn't have the show last week. We're sort of combining last week's show with this week's show, and so we're merging those shows tonight with topics from last week and this week, so that's how it's being well done. But anyway, while Jim's we're waiting for let's bring our guest on board with us. He is a very good friend of the Liberty Movement. He is very well a good friend in the movement all the way around, and he is the founder of Sovereign University. Please welcome my very good friend, Jim Davidson. Jim, you with us?
I believe I am. Can you hear me now?
All right. I can hear you. I couldn't say anything while the file was playing because the show was starting, so I couldn't do anything at that point. But now we're all set to go, and here's our next guest. He is a very good friend of the Liberty Movement, and hopefully he's going to be with us tonight. Let's see here. He's a very good friend and all the way around nice guy. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, he is a very very good, very great activist in the liberty movement, and very well known. Please welcome. Correct me if I'm wrong, but is this Edgardo Peregrino, or is this Stephen Meier?
This is Steve Meier. Yes.
Steve Meier. Okay. Steve, thank you for joining us on the show.
Always a pleasure.
No problem. So, that's not a problem at all. And it's, I'm trying to, let everybody know how to call into the show and everything. So, Edgardo's having a problem calling into the show, so he should be joining us any moment now. And we'll, I'll iron out that problem with him in a second here. I really hate Firefox sometimes. So, having said that, I guess we're going to start right now, which is, what's going on with the media, what's been going on in the last week, or actually this week, more to the point, which is Occupy Wall Street being moved. And apparently we're having this problem. And apparently we've got a number of people in the movement who are, there's a very contingent of libertarians in Occupy Wall Street. And what can I say? I mean, you've got a number of people in the movement who are involved with Occupy Wall Street right now and make no bones about it. Right now, there's been a lot of slamming of Occupy, and I think this really goes to the heart of everything that is happening to this country on very, very strong basis here. And I guess the question that comes before us, is it a surprise that the media is basically ignoring? Also, the cops in riot gear are just showing exactly how evil they are. Is that the case? Fuck you. Hello? Can you hear me?
Hello.
Yeah, no, you're breaking up at this point.
I'm breaking up?
You're breaking up.
There was a very loud whistle for some reason, and I don't know what caused that.
Heard most of it up until you were talking about the question. So, we were talking about Occupy Wall Street, and you were talking about libertarian participation in it, and you were talking about the media, and then I believe you started talking about the media not paying attention or not giving any recognition to the libertarian participation in Wall Street, in Occupy Wall Street. Is that the gist of it?
Well, I'm asking this important question, which is the cops are in riot gear. They're moving the occupiers of Zacotti Park,
right?
And it's gotten very, very awful.
Right, and not just there, because we've had words. Right, we've had the episodes up in Oakland and Berkeley, California, here on the West Coast, and obviously up in Portland as well, where the police have come in and moved the protesters out of their various encampments, so to speak. The one in New York is kind of interesting because the place they chose to occupy was private property, but it was private property that was done under the arrangement of, as I understand it, where a property developer was given a requirement to have a certain amount of open space to go along with theirs. So it'd be interesting to see what the requirements that the government imposed on the property owners as far as keeping that open and available to the public.
Well, and the other thing about that is that it's a traditional meeting place. It was a meeting place that was available to the public before it was repurposed as private land for this developer, and that's why it had to be kept open. So it's not clear that the private property interest actually exists, because there's a long-standing tradition in this country of something called adverse possession. If you leave a space open and people travel through there, or if they go there to gather, they have possession. The people generally have possession. And yes, that is adverse to the interests of the owner, but that's how it works. If you want to keep your land, you have to fence it. You have to have at least one day a year when you keep everybody off of it. And they haven't done that. And so it's been many, many years that this has been a public open space, and there's been no effort made to prevent adverse possession until last week.
Right, but how about the issue of camping there? I mean, has that been tolerated on a routine basis over the years, or was this a new use of the land very recently?
I don't know. I mean, I think that the basic fact is that vagrancy in New York isn't tolerated well, and that if people had been pitching tents there before, it wouldn't be. But I see that as being a new form of speech. In fact, it's a form of speech that's appeared in this country over and over again. The Bonus Army had an encampment across the Potomac from Washington, D.C. in the early 1930s, which was actually attacked and destroyed by Douglas MacArthur, Eisenhower, and Patton, resulting in a massacre which has not been very well documented. And so I see this as the same sort of free speech, peaceable assembly, First Amendment guaranteed right, as well as Ninth Amendment guaranteed right. And I don't believe that the police have the authority to take the tents and the books and incinerate them as they have done, because there's a Fifth Amendment protection that we're supposed to have a due process of law. We're supposed to have a court hearing where both sides get to speak and present their arguments before anyone is deprived of their property. And so, the police have just been running roughshod over that. And I don't blame the police in particular. I blame Mayor Bloomberg in particular. This is his idea. This is his pogrom against the people of Occupy.
Which now, unfortunately, the way I look at it, begs a very big question. Why this sudden need? And this is the thing that really gets my goat here. Why the sudden need to basically vilify and demonize the entire Occupy movement? That's the big question right there. I mean, is it really? I mean, what is it with the Republicans and Mayor Bloomberg and these little twats who have nothing better to do than to basically brand them as very less? You've got people on Fox News like Greg Gutfeld and Andrea Tartaros, whose name sounds like tartar sauce as far as I'm concerned, Eric Bolling and Dana Perino basically saying, well, these people are nothing but lawless. They're pooping on cop cars. They're actually creating chaos on the streets. They're trying to stop. They're blocking traffic. Yada, yada, yada. And, I believe that these reports are spun to make it sound like these people are aggressive and violent, when I've been reading more and more reports about the cops being abusive and evil fucktards, as they usually are. Care to chime in here on that, Stephen?
Yeah, sure. I mean, again, watching the news reports of what's going on here in the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area, with the Oakland and the different groups inside the Occupy movement, where they took the march down to the port and they essentially tried to shut the port down, and they did a pretty good job for a day. And then at the end of the day, what had been a more or less a peaceful demonstration, you end up with a certain segment of the group which engaged in destruction of private property. And so is it fair to characterize the entire movement by a small percentage? And I'd say no, but then on the other hand, certainly the property owners have a right to protect their property from that small percentage. There's also another thing going on here in Oakland. They talk a lot about the negative impact on the small businesses in the area. And so, yes, people have a right to protest, absolutely. But you can imagine that as businesses are forced to shut down, that is going to impact how people feel about it. And is it a good tactic? Is it a tactic that's going to work, or is there something going to be accomplished? It's hard to say, but the impact on the communities is going to have an impact on how people are going to, in the long run, feel about the whole episode.
I think that there's a lot more to this story than just the economic impact on some people's businesses, because some of the businesses, including things like ports, get a lot of economic support from them. It is not, I think, clear to me that port operations are entirely free market in this country. You have to have a very close connection with the national government and very often with the state government in order to have access to business on the port. And so I'm not entirely sympathetic if those people lose business for a day because the protesters are upset with having been violently set upon, shot in the face, brutalized by the police, pepper sprayed, caged, arrested, beaten, tortured. All of this crap has to stop, and the police have to stop it. The police have to stop rioting against the demonstrators, because this isn't the demonstrators rioting. This is a repeat of what happened at the August 1968 Chicago Democratic National Convention. The police rioted. It's not the people rioting. The people just want to protest. And to some extent, they're willing even to accommodate a change in location. If it's affecting a business badly, if it's affecting some small mom-and-pop business badly, I think that voice can be heard. I think that voice can be heard in the General Assemblies. But I think people have a right to protest. And we're fucking fed up with the economic injustice in this country for good reason.
But do people have a right to smash windows and take spray paint and spray it on private property?
Well, I'm not going to defend that behavior because it's
so the point
because
is,
it's a broken window fallacy.
My point is at least in Oakland, there was a contingent of the protesters who were doing, and there was a large contingent which did a lot of work to contain that small contingent. But it's like I understand that the behavior of the police has often, and in Oakland certainly has often been poor, criminal.
Oh, come on, it's criminal. It's not just poor behavior; it's evil behavior.
Well, I did use the word criminal before you did, but that doesn't authorize another group of people to target a business and engage in destructive behavior against it.
That may be true, but you have to expect that people are going to be reacting very negatively when they've been targets of police violence. And so the police had a responsibility to not start this. They started down this path.
Okay. Before we go any further, I just want to point out, another guest has joined us, and my partner in crime as well. Hey, partner, you still with us?
Yes, I am. I'm here. Sorry I was late. Just there was something that had to be finished before I could jump on the air, so I'm here. How's it going, guys?
Okay. And I'm still here, and we're actually warming up. So our third and final guest for the night, unless else, is our good friend from from South California. He is a very friend of ours, and I believe he's a very big pro-liberty activist, very strong left-leaning libertarian, and probably one of the biggest pro-liberty activists in the movement. Please welcome Edgardo Peregrino. Edgardo, you with us?
Oh, yes, I'm right here. Thank you so much.
Oh, no problem. Thank you for joining us. And
of course.
Just out of curiosity, is D. Frank Robinson on the air?
Excuse me?
Okay, guess not. All right, I guess he's not on the air. Good. Because I had another guest on standby just in case and nobody was going to show up. But anyway, so having said all that, but Stephen, just to get back to a point that you were making here, okay? A clip of Larry Elder, talk show radio host Larry Elder on KABC Radio, making this statement about the occupiers. And this is what he had to say in California, basically. Listen to this.
I'm not hearing anything.
I was going to say, I haven't heard anything I can argue with.
Okay. That might be a problem with the vMotion software, so I might have to reset it. But anyway, basically, if you're not hearing anything, basically, Larry Elder is basically saying on the air that for all intents and purposes, that there were over 40 cops that showed up in riot gear. You had a bunch of protesters that were marching, and many of them were being handcuffed and whatnot. And basically, you've got a number of these protesters who are saying, basically saying, okay, we're not going to take it anymore, pretty much, with what the banks are doing. And basically, he's trying to make it out to be that, for all intents and purposes, you've got a problem with the banks you've got a problem with the occupiers for all this does. They're just being lawless. They're basically creating disorder. They're a problem on the streets. The cops, were justified in, arresting these folks because they're trying to...
Could you characterize this guy a little bit for me? Because I don't know who Larry Elder is or why I should care what he thinks.
Larry Elder is the so-called firebrand libertarian. He's a Republican, but they all call themselves libertarians, right? Like, that's the usual name they go by.
And what country is he in? What part of what country?
Basically, he's in California. He's a black talk show host. He's more of a conservative than a libertarian. This guy isn't get with.
Yeah.
And he basically comes in and he basically starts shit about, the Occupy protests. What do they want? They're leaderless. They've got no direction. They really have no idea what they want. Okay, first of all, that's bullshit. They have a pretty good idea of what they want. Michelle Seven of New Hampshire, was actually at the Occupy event in New York, and they pretty much had a very good idea of what they want. They want the government to be accountable, but they also want pretty much the banks to be accountable to the government. So for him to say that they're disorganized, because that seems to be a recurring theme among the right these days, that they don't,
right. I mean, obviously that's a recurring thing among the right, because conservatives want everybody to be part of a hierarchy. Everybody has to keep their place. Everybody has to be part of the caste system. Everybody has to bow and scrape when their betters come around. Everybody has to follow the rules. Everybody has to be uniform. And it's stupid. The right wing in this country, the conservative movement in this country, is a bunch of fat, prescription drug addicted idiots like Rush Limbaugh. And I don't know who this Larry Elder is, but I'm sure there's something wrong with him. And I don't really care what they have to say. I don't know why we even give them the time of day.
Well, why I mention this is because it's people like him and the people on Fox News that basically smear these people. Look, I may not agree with everything that the occupiers are representing, but at least they're right about a lot of things, particularly when the state has basically destroyed the lives of a lot of Americans, and particularly, not to mention, has very good control of the economy.
The state has destroyed the economy and has helped the bankers survive the destruction that the state brought about of the economy. And as to this issue of leaderlessness is the libertarian position. Everybody is equal. If everybody's equal under the law, then we don't need to have leaders. We don't need to have a hierarchy. And yes, it's true. The Occupy Wall Street movement identifies itself as a leaderless collective of autonomous individuals. And not only that, it recognizes that there is autonomous action by individuals that is not approved by the General Assemblies, that is independent, and individuals have to be responsible for their own choices. And I don't agree with every choice. As Stephen and I were going over earlier, I don't agree with the people breaking windows and vandalizing property, because I don't think that helps. But I understand that there are going to be people in the Occupy movement who are going to do that because they're pissed off and they're fed up and they're out of control and they don't really know what better things to do. And I would like to educate them. I would like to help them find better things to do. But I understand they're outraged and I understand their anger, because I've been very angry for a very long time.
I'm sure you have a lot to say on this, Edgardo. Your take on the Occupy movement, pretty much. I mean, obviously, particularly in California, there's, not in California, but there's also supposedly a report going now in D.C. that, the occupiers are being violent, according to Radley Balco. I mean, I just don't buy that shit. I'm just not buying it. What say you on this?
Well, as far as I'm concerned, I do disagree with a lot of what I think I have to say, but I do agree with the overall message. And I don't agree with police beating them as if they're committing crimes. I mean, sure, some of them are committing crimes, but that doesn't mean you beat them senselessly.
Well, that's true. And, what really gets me more than anything else is the, I guess it's the arrogance of, you've got assholes like, shall we say, like Mayor Bloomberg and the rest of the police, the pigs. Oh, sorry. We can't call them pigs. They're still cops. But yes, I do mean pigs. These are people who go out and actually beat people to a pulp. And this is nothing but clear case of sadism and fucking psychopathological bloodlust to the extreme. Wouldn't you say that, Jim?
Well, I think that it's very, very clear in some cases. I've posted on my wall several times different police officers, including the explicit information about the people they've joyously beaten and viciously brutalized, and in some cases severely injured. And not only that, but I've gone to the links of posting their personal phone numbers, their email addresses, their physical addresses, because I don't think these bastards have any right to privacy. When they start violating the freedoms of other people, they can goddamn well face the wrath of the public. I don't think that these people in the government, including in the police forces, should expect to live in wood frame houses among the people they're brutalizing. I think they have to understand that when they attack their neighbors, that their neighbors are going to come and see to it that that stops. And I don't care whether it's through the court system, through lawsuits, or other actions. I think people have a right to defend themselves, and by God, we're going to do that in this country.
Right. But you also agree that people have a right to defend their property, right? So that if a mob attacks your business, you have a right to defend your business, right?
I believe that, yeah. You know, I think that it would be much better if the people in the Occupy movement would organize themselves to intervene against violence, because I think misdirected violence is a bad idea, and it's bad for the movement. It's also bad for the property owners, and that if we were to intervene ourselves, that would be much better than having the police pretend to intervene on behalf of the property owners and actually just beat the hell out of people because they like beating the hell out of people.
Yeah, I believe the term often that's used is self-policing.
Well, yeah, and I think that we are adults and that we can begin a process of policing ourselves beyond the state. Or, you know, maybe the word police is actually terribly tainted now because of all the police brutality, and maybe we should use some other type of term like defense services and conflict resolution. I believe these things can be provided in the private sector, and that people can figure out for themselves how to do these things without having taxpayers held up at the point of a gun and evicted from their homes for failure to pay property taxes in order to pay thugs who are trained by the military and paramilitary tactics to brutally suppress individual liberty. I don't think we need that. I don't think we need the government. I'm an anarchist, and I always will be.
Mm-hmm. But, you know, that's the thing here, is that we seem to think that, you know, attacking these protesters is going to do us any good. I think the biggest mistake that, you know, you've got these sadists, you know, in the in these areas that really want these protesters, like, you know, these fucking Republicans. I mean, they all say, you know, the Tea Party movement was about small government. Small government, my ass.
Except here in California, the people that were running the police were not the Republicans. They are the Democrats.
Well, still, you know, the point is that the Democrats, even out in California and even out in New York, I mean, you know, I don't want to picture myself as somebody who's against the 1% entirely, but there are but the 1% who happen to be the people who are making, say, six figures or upwards of seven.
The cutoff point is $350K approximately. If you make more than $350K, you're in the top 1%.
Right, and I don't even think that the top 1% is the right number. I think you have to go even higher than that. You have to be talking about 0.1% who are making vast fortunes, and they're profiting from the war effort. They're profiting from the prison industry, and they are making millions of dollars a year. I don't really think the correct number is 99% versus 1%. I think there's an even smaller minority at the very pinnacle who are using the state violently and aggressively to target other people in other countries, to target the people in this country, and they are bleeding us white. And I don't think we should have these parasitical bastards on our throats anymore.
Okay. Well, how about the founders of companies like Google and Facebook? I mean, these guys are multi-billionaires, but they made their money by creating new industries. Do you lump them in with the bankers?
Well, why would I have to do that?
Well, see, that's my point. Is when you do it based upon income and you declare, I don't care, 10%, 0.1%.
No, I'm not saying about the dollar amount. I'm saying about the source of their income. I'm talking about people like Barack Obama, who makes about $5 million a year and is paid money from the defense contractors, the big bankers, the big accounting firms, all these other people, and his work is coercive and aggressive, and he is supported by very, very evil people. And I'm also concerned about the big bankers who've gotten these enormous bailouts. I'm concerned about the military contractor companies like Lockheed and Boeing. I'm concerned about the prison industry companies like Corrections Corporations of America. These people are making millions and millions of dollars personally, and their corporations are making billions and billions of dollars annually, and what they're doing for a living is evil. Now, I can make an argument about Google that their close relationship with the National Security Agency is a concern. On the other hand, the National Security Agency in 2005 released all of the truth about the fact that there was no Gulf of Tonkin incident in 1964 and the Vietnam War was based on a lie. So I kind of have mixed emotions about the National Security Agency. On the other hand, people in foreign countries have said that the National Security Agency is listening in on their phone conversations and turning that information over to big businesses like General Motors, and that kind of pisses me off. So I have mixed emotions about that. But Facebook has founding shareholders from the Central Intelligence Agency, and I don't like Facebook at all. I don't like Adam Mosseri, and I don't like Mark Zuckerberg. And if they don't like me, fuck them.
Now, the problem I'm having is when you use a percentage, but you group a group of people based upon a percentage of their income. So if you want to talk bankers, you talk bankers. If you want to talk military defense industry and the people making their money, you do that. But the problem is when you take me, who runs a small high-tech company, and you lump me in with the bankers and say all those people making 1%.
I didn't do that.
Bullshit.
I didn't do that. I didn't do that.
Well,
I mean, obviously the Occupy Wall Street people have some bad rhetoric, and I don't completely agree with it. I don't agree that the 1% is really all that much in control. I think it's a much smaller percentage, and obviously it doesn't have to do with the amount of money you make. It has to do with the source of that money, whether it's coming from a really egregious, sick relationship with government, or whether it's you're creating value. And I suspect, based on what you said, Stephen, that you're actually creating value.
Stephen, let me interject here for a second. And Jim's right on the fucking button here. Okay, the problem here is that the uber elite within that part of Wall Street. Okay, keep in mind that Wall Street's been dominated by Democrats. Think of Jamie Dimon, for instance, president and CEO of J.P. Morgan Chase, lifelong Democrat and pals with Barack Obama. All right, these are the people who have been running Wall Street for years. The Republicans have been cheering on the Democrats for years because behind the scenes, they're both profiting at the expense of the people in this country, and they have that connections with a lot of corporations in America that, believe it or not, and I am against the idea of a corporation, the idea of a corporation being a legal breeding entity, for crying out loud. I mean, if we're talking about a free market, that's one thing. But when we're talking about, Wall Street being pro-business and not being pro-free market, that's very much what's going on in the case. We're talking about literally of people from Wall Street who are ruling and controlling the government. We're talking about a corporatocracy here. That's exactly, that's actually what has been part of this government right now. It's even called a plutocracy. These are people who really own the government. They buy out bureaucrats and the SEC, the FTC, the ATF, the Department of Homeland Security, the Defense Department. I mean, has anybody forgotten Blackwater, for fuck's sake? I mean, these are the same people who actually own the federal government. So anytime, whenever I hear a libertarian go off the rails by saying, we have a free market by defending and rushing to the aid of corporate America or big business.
I don't think Stephen said that. Well, I mean, I haven't heard Stephen say that. I think we probably do, to some extent, have in software and certain kinds of microcomputing devices something like a free market. It's not perfectly free. There's a lot of regulation, and there's certainly a lot of taxation. But I'm not confident that all high-tech businesses are evil, and I don't think you'd probably have Stephen on the show if you thought he was part of the evil empire. Would you?
Well, I'm not saying that Steve. I'm not. Okay, I did not necessarily mean to imply that. But what I'm trying to point out here is that this entire Wall Street, these group of people on Wall Street, the banks that were bailed out, lobbied for the states to basically give them that money, to give them that control over the government. These are people who really have a vested interest in the government. There are three different terms of capitalism here. The first kind of capitalism, which is a voluntary exchange of goods and services. Then you've got the other kind of capitalism, which people call it crony capitalism, this collusion between big business and the state. Then you've got another brand of capitalism, which means, okay, you've got the elites within these corporations who are not just doing business with the state, they're even controlling the state. They're pulling the strings. They're the ones who have that power and control. That's the other kind of capitalism that basically depends upon guarantees, privileges, subsidies, IP laws, and protectionism that guarantees their safety net, their overall welfare system, so that they can actually be protected and insulated from market competition. Tell me if I'm wrong. Because
let me make a couple comments rather than tell you whether you're wrong or not. First of all, we talk about control of the government, and you're making. I think you brought up at least one point, which is the bureaucracies and how people move in and out of businesses and interact with the bureaucracies, which is one way of business to heavily influence the bureaucracy. And the other, of course, is the legislative and executive branches, which are elected. I actually am, and continue to be very disappointed, but not surprised, at the people who vote in this country, because they are the ones who ultimately are responsible. You'd like to say that when businesses take money and can have unfettered, advertising, political advertising, for instance, that businesses are essentially buying the election, but that's proven, at least here in California, that not always to be very successful. We've had people come in with large sums of money and run for governor and been defeated. The primary problem I think we have in this country actually goes right back to the people. I've talked to a number of people who are in the middle class, and friends I grew up with, and comes around to levels of people are paying in taxes. It's this. We have a budget of $3.5 trillion approximately in the U.S. government. We have approximately 300 million Americans. That means that per individual, you need about $11,000 to $12,000 in revenue into the federal government to maintain that level of spending. Now, you'd like to say, okay, someone who's middle income, as a middle income family, should be carrying their own weight. Unfortunately, that requires a middle income family, if you talk three people, to be paying about $36,000 in taxes, which is pretty hard to do on an income of, say, $50,000.
Yep.
All right. So now they look around. They say, well, we want all these expensive programs. We want our Social Security. We want our Medicare. We want our Medi-Cal. We want the Defense Department. We want all these expensive programs, but we want someone else to pay for them. And so even here in California, they're looking at the increase in tuition for the state university system. They go out and they survey the California public. They want the schools to have funding. They want low tuition rates. They don't want increased taxes to pay for it. What's the solution? Sell bonds.
Well, that's one of the solutions. The other classic solution, of course, is to have students take out student loans, which since 2005, the bankruptcy laws have been changed, and student loans can never be discharged in bankruptcy court, which is a real great benefit to the banking cartel. But could I address something about this concern you have about the voters? Because I do understand about these polls that the marketing people go out and do their surveys and try to get a statistically significant sample that's representative and random. And then they tell you that people do want things and they don't want to pay for them if they can avoid that, which, I do kind of understand. People want something for nothing. That's kind of a classic part of how grifters and con artists have always built other people. And I think that's really what politicians are, is grifters and con artists. But I'm not confident that when it comes time to actually casting ballots, that Americans are actually showing up at the polls in the kind of numbers you think. And I would use the November 2010 election results to try to characterize this for you. 86.8 million Americans voted in that election. And there were about 3 million votes cast for candidates other than Democrats and Republicans, 1 million of whom were Libertarians. Some people would like to know that. But the interesting part to that, to me, is that out of 300 million Americans, there were another 145 million who were qualified to vote by reason of being over age 18 and also not currently incarcerated for a felony. And those people didn't vote. They did not cast a vote in November of 2010, even though every seat in Congress was up for grabs. And I believe that's because they're very disappointed in the system. They were disappointed when large numbers of people voted in 2008 for real change, or so they were told, and Barack Obama basically is the 10th term of Richard Nixon. So I think a lot of people are very disappointed in the system, and they have withdrawn their consent by withdrawing from the voting process. And a lot of people also, you might be surprised to learn, something like 110 million in the year 2010 and 135 million in the year 2011 did not file any form of income tax, even though the IRS thought they should. That's a lot of people who don't think they're obligated to pay for a system that doesn't do a goddamn thing for them.
Well, I think that really says a lot right there, Jim. I mean, and Steve, I love you, man. I'm telling you right now, I think you give the voters a little too much credit. Yes, there's a kernel of truth in what you're saying, that the voters are responsible for electing these politicians and for actually feeling the system. But, even as Jim rightfully pointed out, less and less people are voting, which is a good thing, because people are really figuring out, at least somewhere along the line, that the system is stacked against them, no matter what. And they have to basically give the middle finger to the entire system itself and to the people behind the system, because gee, this system is corrupt, it's decadent, and you can't really fix it. It's unfixable. It's unworkable. It's inherently designed to work against the voters. Now, why I say the system collapse, if the political system collapse, damn the political system and let it collapse. That's all I got. That's basically probably the best thing that can happen to it. Isn't that right, Edgardo?
Yeah, and I want to expand on the whole corporations and I guess like how people say they're free market. Well, basically, I had this argument with a lot of, I guess, what you call right-libertarians, where they believe corporations are free market, even though they get monopoly protections, they get subsidies from the state, and a lot of the corporations who claim to be free markets, basically they run out like small mom-and-pop shops, and one example is Walmart, which has been known to run out these small mom-and-pop shops in small towns and has been known to kick out any competition that threatens their profits.
Yeah, but how does Walmart do that?
So basically, it's not, since they get monopoly protections from the state, basically they are allowed to expand outward. And basically, if they didn't have the monopoly protections, they didn't have the corporate subsidies, they would actually be forced to compete against these mom-and-pop shops. But since we're not talking about a true free market system, basically they're rather participating in a system more of state capitalism rather than the purest free market system that will not exist if government continues to exist.
I was under the understanding that Walmart tends to have a very efficient supply chain management system.
They do. They have a very efficient.
Very efficient. And so what they do is they tend to come into the small markets and they tend to compete very aggressively on price.
That's true.
They keep they keep their wages low. There's a lot of bad things to say about Walmart, but the way they do it essentially, and what happens is by bringing the prices down, people still have a choice. They can choose to buy at the older retail stores, or they can go in and they can buy from Walmart. And they go in and they buy.
That's true, but I don't think that's a complete answer, Stephen.
Well,
I think.
Then let me finish it.
Well, go ahead.
And again, see, I'm a big believer in individual personal responsibility. Take responsibility for your action. Take responsibility for yourself. Okay? And so when people, as a group, decide to buy from Walmart and not buy at the local stores to save money, they're acting in their own self-interest, other than they're doing in their own local businesses that they've had there for years.
Yes, could I answer that?
This is a choice that people make on an individual basis, and they don't have to, but they do make it.
Yes, but you're leaving out part of the story.
Right. What part's that?
Well, you mentioned it briefly, but you kind of glossed over it like it doesn't matter, and I think it matters. Walmart keeps their wages low by doing things in the marketplace that the government encourages them to do, including not providing any kind of health care benefits and pushing for a national health care program by the government, including all kinds of devices they use to take money out of the paychecks of their employees, hold them for 90 days before turning them over as withheld taxes and payroll taxes. So there's a huge, huge, huge subsidy to Walmart that is not available to the small mom and pop grocery stores and retailers. And you can say lovely things about what a great thing it is that people have low prices at Walmart. And I'm not even
which of these is not available to the small company? Because I employ people. I have to turn in my withholding taxes that we're forced to collect to the government.
And you're gonna tell me that you pay less than market wages for the people who work for you, right?
No. How can you say they pay less than market wages if they have people who work for them?
Well, you might want to look into the employment practices of Walmart. There's quite a lot of writing on that topic.
I'm quite aware of it, but my point is, if as you said, they were actually paying below market wages, then they wouldn't have employees. People wouldn't work for them. They'd work somewhere else.
I don't think that's true.
And furthermore, no company
I think they're ignoring the enormous role of the government in subsidizing the large employers like General Motors and Walmart.
I know that Walmart, for instance, set up a distribution center in, I believe it's New Mexico. And they essentially were forgiven, I believe, property taxes from the local community.
Yeah.
And that was one of the things that the local community did to get them to select their location. It was negotiating.
No. You're saying that wrong. If you don't mind my correcting you, you're saying that a local government did that. A local government forgive those taxes. But that doesn't say that the community was behind it. That just means that the people who cheated on the elections and miscounted the votes and got into power are the ones who forgave those taxes and gave that big kickback to Walmart. And that's not the only subsidy for Walmart, right? I mean, this is not the only case. It's not just one community in New Mexico.
Right here, and I'm going to have a disagreement with you on this one, and that's the term subsidy. You see, to me, a subsidy is when somebody writes a check to somebody else. It's like when people say we're subsidizing the wealthy. When we reduce the income tax from 40% on the top
I didn't say that.
to 35%.
Don't put that straw in my mouth and try to set it on fire.
What I'm saying is I'm objecting to the use of the word subsidies when the government reduces taxes.
Uh-huh.
Right? Now, if the government says, we'll build your building for you, then you're subsidizing.
Well, it's because it's discriminatory, Stephen. Walmart got that tax break, and the mom and pop stores don't get that tax break. So that is a subsidy for Walmart. It's a way of
Walmart subsidized the local community by bringing in a lot of jobs into that distribution center.
A lot of shitty jobs at very low wages that they get away with paying because they pay off the people and the employment commissions and the state government. I mean, we can go on and on about Walmart. McDonald's and General Motors receive these huge government bailouts. Are you going to defend that?
McDonald's
we're busy putting straw in each other's mouths and setting it on fire.
No.
You're not going to say that the bank bailout.
Did you just say McDonald's got a bailout from the federal government?
Yeah.
Okay, you want to provide documentation on that? Because I'm quite unaware of that one.
Why don't you go to Wikipedia and look at McDonald's?
Neither am I.
I will one of these days.
General Motors got a bailout, right?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Huge government bailout.
Yep, it definitely did.
And you can look it up. McDonald's is on that list, and the big banks are on that list. Now, that's a direct subsidy, right? We can agree that's a subsidy, right, Stephen?
If you write a check out, if the government writes a check out to someone like they did with General Motors saying, we'll help you pay your bills, absolutely.
Actually, they kind of took over General Motors. They actually took ownership for a while.
Yeah, I agree.
So, it seems to me that businesses ought to be allowed to fail, right? I mean, that's part of the American tradition is that if you screw up, if your bank buys a bunch of mortgage-backed securities and repackages them and gets screwed to the wall by other bankers, that your bank should fail. I mean, that's where bankruptcy comes from, right? The bank is rupt. They actually break the bench in the old merchant houses of Italy.
But while we're talking about that, let's compare General Motors to the big banks.
Okay.
What happened to the stockholders of General Motors?
They got screwed.
Hold it.
Oh, I'm sorry. We're out of turn.
Jump in here for a second here. Okay. Okay. So, Stephen, let me point out something here about Walmart, and I need to get back to Walmart briefly here for a second. Like any big business, like any big corporation out there, okay, Walmart, like a lot of big companies, like a lot of big corporations, do benefit from certain tax advantages because as a business,
they have negotiating strength.
Have their own. But wait a second, let me finish. They have their lobbyists in Washington as much as any business company out there. When Microsoft was actually being pursued at one point by the Justice Department because of the charges of having a monopoly of software, after that, Bill Gates discovered the wondrous world of Washington, where he basically could have his lobbyists setting foot in Washington and have the rules changed in his favor at the expense of the smaller companies that would bear the brunt of the regulations. So big business, including Walmart, write the regulatory policies that the politicians go for, including the bureaucrats, because they're all in on it, and they write the regulations that basically hurt other businesses. They're for regulations too.
I absolutely agree with you on that, Todd. Yes, they do. And another classic example is, why were there only two oil companies that do drilling in Alaska? You got BP and ARCO.
Okay.
They have this huge barrier to entry against the small drillers. It's the environmental regulations. The big companies are highly in favor of the environmental regulations because it's used as a barrier to entry into the market.
And they
fully agree with you.
Safety net that comes with the regulations too, by the way. Let's not forget that. And you're right. They enjoy that because let's be clear about this, okay? The reason why Walmart does pay their employees much lower wages than they normally would, yes, a lot of it is because they take out and collect they collect the taxes and they remit those taxes. You know, it's often said that businesses pay taxes. Bullshit. They just collect the taxes. But at the same time, the wages of those earners who work for those bosses could be making a lot more. And I don't see Walmart, basically screaming, these employees shouldn't be taxed heavily, or they shouldn't be taxed at all. I don't see them taking the free market position. In fact, Walmart has been a pretty much supporter of the ObamaCare law, and not to mention, it's also been embedded with the Department of Homeland Security. They announced last December that they were going to have, the customers, thanks to their employees, monitor exactly what they're doing in the aisles because we don't want Al-Qaeda building chemical weapon factories.
If you see something, say something.
So,
Janet Napolitano was on the video monitors in Walmart.
That's right. And that's the big problem. In this corporate privilege laced world where they get all the privileges and the small companies that don't have the political clout, all the endless amount of regulations, it's almost impossible to start a startup company because of the way things are nowadays. I love it when companies like Coca-Cola, like the CEO of Coca-Cola a while back, saying, well, you know what, Obama is taxing us to death and regulating us to death, except you are the one that benefited from the regulations that you helped lobbied for. Now, if the taxes get you Would you be bitching about it? Of course not. They support the system as much as the big Wofford College there.
So can I interrupt you for just a minute and disagree with something?
Go ahead.
There's two ways in which I want to disagree with one of the things you said. And one of the things you said was that it's very difficult to start a new business in this country. And that was certainly true for me in 2009 and in the first part of 2010. And I think Stephen might agree with me on this, it is possible to start a new business in this country. It is possible to find venture capital, private capital, angel investors. There are a lot of very generous people who want to see new businesses come to the country. And it's possible to do it in the traditional way of creating, can I finish? Of creating a company. The second way in which I want to disagree with that is that there are a lot of people like me who no longer bother with incorporation and having the government's approval and bank accounts and all this other process. And we just create businesses on the fly. And we are breaking a lot of laws, I believe, based on my knowledge of the law. And we're not paying any attention to that because the government can't catch all of us. It's called agorism. And so we're doing that. Now, and I think that opens up a whole other kettle of fish or maybe a bag of worms. I don't know what the idiom is.
I agree with you. It is possible to create new businesses. There are businesses where it'd be extremely difficult to do, and being a wildcat oil driller in Alaska would be one of them, just because of the environmental regulations. Not that I'm opposed necessarily to not polluting the tundra, but as I said, and this is where I'm agreeing that corporations work with bureaucracies to write regulations, and they'll do their best to make sure that the regulations favor them.
Yep. And what do you think of that, Stephen? What's your opinion of that?
What's my opinion of that? I still basically believe that you have a couple of choices in this country. This is still an elected system of government. The question is how do you win the elections, or how do you broaden the discussion such that we can limit the power of, or open, or make things more fair, so to speak.
Okay. So what if I told you that I don't believe that any government has ever been limited for very long?
Sorry about that.
End up getting
Sorry about that.
Infinite.
I basically lost my signal there. I don't know what happened. I think there's a problem with what's going on in the show tonight. But anyway,
you're much louder now, Todd.
Oh, okay. Well,
I was definitely improved.
I was having a conversation with Stephen. I don't know how much of this you lost, but Stephen was postulating.
Just about a few seconds, but go ahead.
Stephen was.
Yeah, look, and it boils down to. You're saying, and I understand. You're saying that no government will be limited for long because, and here I tend to agree with you. Governments and people that collect towards governments are there to be in control, and they want power, and they will try to accumulate power. Businesses do the same thing. You look at, our favorite software company, Microsoft, has for years tried to dominate the software industry by hook or by crook.
Yeah, and I think we all have examples of by crook.
Yeah, if you said that the quote the business of government was power, then they would try and obviously collect as much power as possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But the point of a democracy is to limit that to where the people basically are supposed to come in and say, well, yeah, we want to reduce your power, and that's our responsibility.
Are you a libertarian, Stephen?
Yes, I am.
So the Libertarian Party, in my recollection, was founded in 1971, I think in the living room of the Denver apartment of a guy named David Nolan. In the 40 years that the Libertarian Party has existed, the national government has grown 18 times larger in terms of its national budget. So I'm curious whether you think that we need another 40 years of Libertarian Party politics, or maybe we've given it a chance.
Well, what is your option?
Oh, my position is anarchism. I don't believe the government will ever limit itself, and therefore I want to withdraw as far from government as possible, give it as little of my money as possible, ignore it to the extent that I can, and fight it tooth and nail to the extent that I have to pay attention to it.
Okay. And here's my experience. I've found that if I'm trying to, say, accumulate as much material wealth as possible, which is one of the things I try to do, that I can either put a great deal of effort into struggling to minimize the amount of taxes I pay, or I can put a great deal of effort into trying to create the next whiz-bang object as an engineer and sell as many of them as possible.
Right.
And what I found is I'm much more successful at the latter than the former. But nonetheless, I take a percentage of what I do, and I feed it back into the struggle against the power of the government.
Well, I'd like to help you with that. I love that percentage idea.
Well, let me chime in here for a second to get back to what, because I wanted to comment on what you said, Jim. Look, I know you disagree with me on one point there, which was that there is that contention within the market that is going for agorism. And I agree with that. Yeah, there are a lot of businesses out there that are starting to go the agorist way. I was referring to mainly your typical business that wants to do it the legal way, go through the regulatory way. But I'm talking about those kind of businesses that choose the environment of, well, rather not getting in trouble without not having a license or being incorporated. I'm talking about those kinds of businesses, and they do happen every single day. I just think that this is exactly what happens when you've got that control. You know, that's why I said it's very difficult to start a business if you're doing it the government way. If you're doing it... Well,
I would argue that that's very true in certain industries. If you wanted to build a new aircraft manufacturing company in this country and you weren't prepared to spend about $20 million complying with regulations and getting into that business, you won't be in that business. I think Tesla Motor Company, competing in the automobile industry, spent right around $10 million in their first year doing nothing but filling out paperwork, complying with government regulations, and trying to get a place in the industry. So, yes, there is a lot of truth to that in certain specific industries. On the other hand, if you wanted to start a new software company tomorrow, you could do that, and I think Stephen can attest to this. You can create a new high-tech business in Silicon Valley, and they happen all the time. And some of them succeed and some of them fail, and those are the breaks. But there are still unregulated areas, I think, where people can get a leg up and start pretty fast. His example of trying to do wildcat oil
even within
Alaska is a really good one of, you know, you're just not going anywhere if you try that. That's just anything happening. But North Dakota, you can probably wildcat North Dakota right now.
Right. I wanted to shift gears here about just last week, Ohio basically rejected the ObamaCare law. Since when we mentioned ObamaCare, and also a federal appeals court also saying that Obamacare is constitutional. I think this is a win as far as Ohio rejecting Obamacare. I mean, I'm glad to hear that, you know, on one hand, at least it's something. I'm not, for the political system at all. I think, trying to get the states to reject Obamacare is a very arduous and taxing process. It would take a miracle to even get this law repealed at this point. I hope I'm wrong. I hope it gets accomplished, but I just don't see it happening. But then we find ourselves come to a screeching halt because the fucking Supreme Court says, or the appeals court that is, saying, okay, the law is constitutional. People are required to have health insurance, otherwise they can get fined up the ass. As far as I'm concerned, the appeals court can suck my cock, because I am not going to be paying for Obamacare no matter what. I just think that it's just proving once and for all that Obamacare is nothing but a great way for the insurance companies to get kickbacks and subsidies. And
exactly.
And I'm sorry, but Obama is not going to get rid of the insurance industry, because he depends upon the insurance industry to buy their votes to keep his ass in the White House. I mean, despite what the Republicans say, this is probably going to, our system is modeled exactly after France.
Exactly.
I mean, we're talking about the healthcare system. Go ahead.
I'd like to comment about the opponents. Like, some of the opponents of Obamacare, they still want government-run health care. I mean, in the form of Medicaid and Medicare, they argue, oh, we support free markets. But when you immediately ask them, would you get rid of Medicaid and Medicare, they'll freeze and say, no,
right.
no, we don't. We don't want to kill old people. And that's what they're going to do. They're going to do the same thing to you. They'll say, oh, you must want to kill old people.
And it's going to be the same way with Obamacare in the next few years. I mean, it's going to be the same thing when people say, you want to cut Obamacare because you want because the poor can lose their insurance. Oh, no. Don't cut Obamacare. Don't cut Obamacare. Kind of like how the seniors were trapped in the whole Medicare system. And you even think about even touching TRICARE. You have such soldiers who are going to basically shit a brick over it. It's a very much beautifully rigged system, would you not say, Jim D?
I guess if it were forced to say. Is it Jim Davidson you're asking, or Jim Landreth?
Yeah, Jim Davidson.
Well, I would say bad things about Obamacare if I were, if you twisted my arm up behind my back and stuff. Why?
I mean,
why would anyone like it?
But I mean, I'm not saying anybody would like it, but you know that this is nothing but a entitlement program that Obama has set up, and it's worked to his advantage. He managed to get this thing through, which is something that Republicans couldn't even get through, no matter what.
Okay.
So the question here is, are we going to get rid of this motherfucker or what?
Let me put a comment in here if you don't mind. All right.
Go ahead.
Now, what's the difference between the health care that Hillary was working on that got rejected and Obamacare that got accepted?
Not much of a difference, is there?
The difference is the insurance companies figured out that under Obama they were going to make more money. Right? What Obama proposed would actually benefit the insurance companies. Right? Now, what I find interesting is to go back and look at the Massachusetts health care. And they did, some similar things where they mandated you have to have insurance. If you don't have insurance, they're going to fine you. Well, healthy people started gaming the system. They say, okay, it's cheaper to pay the fine than it is to get the insurance. I'll pay the fine. But if I get sick because there's no pre-existing conditions, at that point I'll get health care. And as long as I'm sick, I'll pay for my health insurance. And the moment I'm healthy again, I'll drop it and I'll go back to paying the fine. And it is it is not good for the budget of Massachusetts.
Well, tell that to Mitt Romney, because he's the one who orchestrated that god-awful state-run healthcare system that became basically the genesis behind Obamacare, that he vehemently opposes. I mean, I love his rhetoric that he opposes federally run health care. But if it's done at the state level, if the state can be tyrannical about health care, okay, that's fine by me, because it's only done in one state. Government-run health care, whether it's at the federal level or at the state level or at the local level, doesn't matter. It's still government-run health care that is propped up by the insurance companies, and costs are through the roof. You're going to have care that is going to be mediocre. We're talking mediocre care that really has a long-ass line of so many patients that, like, you might as well have the nurse says, take a number for that machine, we'll just call you and wait for you to see a doctor.
So, Todd, you probably should do an entire show just on the healthcare, because it is a huge issue.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I mean, considering, I would definitely do that. I mean, I would love to have that kind of a discussion there. But, okay, so now, this last Saturday, I think everybody saw this, Ron Paul got a meager 89 seconds throughout the entire debate. Apparently, I guess, he was locked out of the entire time, although of all his answers, I don't see how that was 89 seconds. I think that was over 89 seconds, but then again, I didn't exactly count it. But if it was 89 seconds, then my question is, with Perry and Michelle Bachmann going after Ron Paul and the untelevised part, saying, yes, we need to torture and waterboard our enemies, because if these are tools, as Ricky Perry would say, that would save our young men's lives, because this is war, because this is what happens in war. And I'm thinking to myself, what an evil fuckwad. That these people would take, that these people would, go ahead.
My proposal is whatever enhanced interrogation technique you think is legitimate to use as a presidential candidate, that you should have to endure an hour session of it. And I would at this point like to come out on the record and suggest that having a beautiful woman lap dance is a form of enhanced interrogation that I would support.
Well, to me, that wouldn't be an enhanced interrogation. That would be just a hard-on for me to go bring her to the next bedroom. But Jim, my partner, do you have any comments about this and what we've talked about so far?
Well, with regards to Obamacare and Midocare, whatever we want to call it, Romney Care, however it's termed, I'm just interested in seeing how fast the national plan falls apart with states coming out and denying it. and what the backlash might be from the federal government in response. Do any of the panelists have any comments on that or any predictions on what they think the feds will do in response to several states coming out and rejecting the authority of the government on this, the authority of the federal government on this? Why don't we start with you, Jim?
Well, I guess I think that pox on both their houses. I don't really expect the state of Ohio and the United States government to get together on this, and I suspect. I suspect that what's actually going to happen is a fabulous amount of time and money is going to be spent pursuing the resolution of this issue, and who's going to win? The big government is going to win. I mean, the national government is going to find some way to force the issue, or they will repurpose the elections in Ohio to make it work out to their advantage. But I don't have a dog in that fight.
Right. How about you, Edgardo and Stephen? Same question to you, I guess.
Well, I have to say, going back to the 89-second thing, I have to actually say that he made more sense in 89 seconds than the other candidates did in however long time they got. So I'm not too worried about it. So I'm not too concerned about his 89 seconds because he got his point across.
I totally agree on that point. I totally agree. But you know what's really disappointing about the whole issue with, I mean, all these issues that these candidates have with regards to Iran, they want to put, like, for example, Mitt Romney wants to put economic sanctions on Iran, for fuck's sake. I mean, you've got, or covert military operations. You've got, these people like Michelle Bachmann, who thinks that waterboarding or even assassinating American citizens is a good idea. A good idea? A good idea? Are you kidding me? You evil little bitch. For you to even say that that assassinating American citizens is a good idea. I'm sorry. No, I'm not sorry. I think you are not qualified to rule anybody's life. You should go back home and actually tend to your in-the-closet gay husband.
Okay, so as far as Ron Paul goes, 4 years ago he stood up and argued during the debates against the continued war in Iraq. My big problem with Ron Paul has always been on a woman's right to choose, dealing with her reproductive issues. But 4 years ago, I donated, I think it was $1,000 to Ron Paul to keep him in the Republican primaries, because as long as he was going to go on stage and make comments like he made in his 89 seconds, to me that's worth the money.
And, a lot of people in the media basically said that he got the shaft completely at that debate, which says a lot about exactly the intelligence and the IQ level of the moderators. It used to be that...
Think about the multiplier. How many times has that segment been broadcast? How many people have gone out and looked at it because it was pretty much one of the few interesting parts of the whole thing? I mean, it's like you might give them only a sliver of time, but thanks to YouTube and other technologies out there, that small amount of time becomes a large amount of time.
Right. you know, and to put a finer point to that, you know, I mean, this whole debate, like they couldn't even air the entire debate, you know, only an hour and not the last 30 minutes. That the viewers were cheated out of that entire debate. I mean, you call that debate? I mean, there was a time when the women of the League of Women Voters used to moderate the debates. Then the major parties set up the Commission on Presidential Debates after Ross Perot entered the 92 debate with Clinton and H.W. Bush. So since then, the debating process has been horrendous. It's been bland. Wouldn't you say so, Edgardo?
Yes. As a matter of fact, the Republican Party really hasn't changed. I mean, they've been the same party since their founding in 1854. The only thing that's changed are the actors and I guess probably like their philosophy for probably 5% of it, but the other 95% have not changed at all. They haven't really changed in their ways, and they will never change as long as the major corporations, defense contractors, as long as they're behind them.
Right. You know, I'll tell you one thing. It really disgusts me when you have people in this system who basically benefit from that entire debate system. You know, I mean, the major parties really are doing a big number on that. So I think it's really disgusting and it's very pathetic that we're seeing that across the board. But anyway, moving right along, there's also another thing that came out this week which I thought was very important. And, you know, this was something that I noticed right away. And I have to mention this because apparently this happened last week at a pub. Congressman Joe Walsh screamed at his constituents over the whole bailout mess, over Wall Street, over the whole mess. You know, this is a fine example of, you know, of how not to talk down to your supporters when you're asking them to vote for you. And this is a guy who's basically Looney Tunes. I mean, this guy goes, I agree with that. And then I love the part at the end where he goes, stop talking, or I'll have you removed. I'm thinking, you know, has this guy been paying attention to his constituents or what?
I'm going with the or what category.
Oh, I would be going for the or what. Is this an example of stupidity being the norm in Washington these days, Jim? Because that seems to be what government is anyway.
Which?
I'm talking. Oh, Jim Davidson. Sorry.
Well, I don't know that it might be stupidity. I mean, you know, you should never ascribe to malice what can be thoroughly explained by stupidity. But I really think that the sin here, the particular epithet to attach to this particular crap, is actually arrogance. That this guy is talking to his constituents and talking about having them removed if they don't stop telling him, impinging on his brain with information that he doesn't want to hear. I mean, that's arrogant. He's the one who should be removed. He's the one that if these people's votes were actually being counted, it seems to me he would be removed. And I'm not even confident that we have to stop there as people who believe in freedom. At some point in the American Revolutionary War, people who were collecting the tea tax had boiling hot tea poured down their throats. They were tarred and feathered and ridden out of town on a rail. So if you piss the American people off, and I think there's a lot of history of this, and you can see this in the Battle of Athens after World War II, you can see this in the American Civil War, you can see this in the Revolutionary War, and that war spirit has not ended just because, you know, we haven't managed to have a really big protest until very recently. I think at some point the people who live in wood frame houses in our communities have to understand that if they abuse us, if they brutalize us, if they lie to us and cheat us and send their people out in the streets to rape us and kill us and bash our heads in, the American people aren't going to take that. We don't have to take this garbage from these motherfucking politicians in Washington. And at some point, we're going to stop taking it. And one of my friends, a long, long time ago, after the Waco massacre in 1993, said, you know, Constitution Avenue in Washington, D.C. has a lot of light posts. And every single one of those could be repurposed as a scaffold. And we could put every congressman and every Supreme Court justice on one of those scaffolds. Now, I didn't say that, but he did. And, you know, you got to think about that kind of stuff, because that is the reality of the world. We don't have to stop at voting.
I swear to Christ, Jim. I mean, you know what we should be doing? And, you know, considering...
what are you doing swearing to Christ?
I mean, well, I mean, no, I'm just saying, you know, figuratively. I have to say this. You know when we should be coming back? Instead of, you know, back in the day, if you didn't agree with somebody, you used to put them on a crucifix. You would actually have them nailed to a cross. I think that's what we should be doing to politicians, nailing their asses to crosses. We should be bringing them back.
I thought I was but
keep in mind
to hang them.
Keep in mind that there are regulations here, and you have to use the right type of wood and the right number of bolts while you're doing this.
Oh, man.
Yes, we don't want to do a shoddy job of crucifying a politician.
We want to do a shoddy job. That's right.
More.
Oh, boy. Here's another interesting thing that came out last week that we were going to talk about on the show last week, but we never got around to it, was Jesse Ventura has decided to do two things. Either head to Mexico and will actually get dual citizenship in Mexico, and or run for president. Now, I'm for the first part of it. Get the hell out of Dodge while you still can. But why would you want to run for office? You know, what is he thinking here? This is a guy who's wasting his time on a presidential... I don't think he really should be going for the presidency. He really should be focusing... I mean, he's doing this because his lawsuit against the federal government over the TSA bullshit basically went up in smoke, literally. It just really shows that this guy's priority is backwards. I think, you know, his heart's in the right place, but I think he's wasting his time because he's going to lose.
Could I, for a point of clarification, I just want to make sure I'm talking about the same guy. This Jesse Ventura is the guy who was governor of Minnesota?
That's correct.
And he's the guy who said about his being governor of Minnesota that on the first day he was there, he was shepherded into this conference room where a bunch of these shadowy figures told him, you know, they wanted to know how he got elected because they wanted to make sure this never happened again. Jesse Ventura. I mean, if the man didn't learn anything from that meeting, I don't know what to say.
It means he probably needs a new agent. I mean, seriously, he needs to, take the dual citizenship, Jesse. If you're listening to this show, and I bet you aren't, but in case you are, take the dual citizenship. Actually, renounce your citizenship here and just go to Mexico. You're better off there.
What's the tax rate?
Well, yeah. But your thoughts on that, Stephen, really quick, Ventura.
Excuse me. My thoughts on Jesse. What should he do? I think I agree with you. I don't think he has a ghost of a chance. However, doesn't mean he can't make money doing it. I mean, all he's got to do is get in there, make enough noise, and publish a book, right?
A campaign book?
Yep. I mean, get on a bunch of talk shows and promote himself. I mean, it's not the first time this has happened in the presidential election.
If I could support him on this show, I would probably be on the major news. No, I'm kidding. But no, I think that this guy, I just don't understand why he is so obsessed with this, but whatever. I mean, anyway, here's another thing.
He's what, an actor, a wrestler. He's highly interested in self-promotion.
And
sure, actors and wrestlers can get outraged too. I understand that, but you also have a choice of going quietly into the night, or you can try and make some more noise. I don't know. It sounds to me that what the problem I have with Jesse is it's like the Occupy movement is there doesn't seem to be a message, or it's really hard to discern what the message is. So give me a candidate who runs, who's pro-freedom and is gonna, help tear down some of the walls.
What about you, Edgardo? Your thoughts on Ventura, really quick.
On Jesse Ventura?
Yep.
Well, I really have nothing else to add. Although I will say that I think
he's a mixed bag, isn't he?
Yeah, I've grown tired of him. I mean, he's really, I guess he irritated me a lot because of he still supports the idea that somehow if government was run by his man, or that if he was the head of the government, that somehow things would be better. So I am really irritated by Jesse Ventura now.
Yeah, I'm wondering if this guy really still believes that the Bilderbergers are going after him. No, just kidding. Now, Stephen, last week when you originally were supposed to come on the show, you wanted to talk about, if you can, about the mayoral election in San Francisco. How did that turn out?
That's a good question. I haven't even followed it. The thing I wanted to talk about was the ranked choice voting that was being used. And it gets back to a common mantra that you'll hear from me, which is talking about voters and why voters, always vote either Republican or Democrat or heavily vote that way or stay home and don't participate. And the thing you hear when you talk to people, it's like, well, why don't you vote Green or why don't you vote Libertarian? It's like, well, if I vote Green, then the Republican will win. And even though the Democrats are evil, they're less evil than the Republicans. And therefore, they don't vote their party of choice. They vote the party of reality, as far as they're concerned. So and when you look at it, we have a very narrow debate in our politics in this country at the legislative level. It's almost there's so little difference between the Democrats and the Republicans on so many issues that we don't have an honest discussion. So any technique which broadens the political discussion at the executive or at the legislative branch, I'm in favor of. So the question is And when I look at it, I can see two methods that you can do to broaden the political discussion at that level. And one is to get rid of districts, and therefore you have to have people run as part of a party. And the parties are given a percentage of the vote or of the legislators based upon the percentage of the vote they get. That'd be one way of doing it. But another way of doing it, yeah.
You mean gerrymandering?
Well, gerrymandering is used to that, but no, it's a winner-take-all, and when you have a winner-take-all, it tends to force an existence of only two parties.
Right. Okay. I get now.
And so, if you get rid of the districts and do something on a broader scale, where people vote and you have to be associated with a list of candidates from a party, for instance, and then at the end of the election you divvy up the seats in the legislature based upon the vote that the party got, that would be one way of broadening it. Another way of broadening it would be this ranked choice voting, which is where you suddenly take away from people this forced, you're forced to choose the lesser of the two evils. When you go to the ranked choice voting, where you can say, you know what, my last vote will go to the lesser of the two evils, but my first vote is going to go to the guy I'd really like to have.
Right.
And at least that way we can start to gauge, how much support alternative ideas have in this country. And so that's the thing I wanted to bring up about ranked.
And here's another thing that I think we need to point out here is that's not just the only issue that matters. The Congress was voting to repeal this week the Defense of Marriage Act, which Ron Paul unfortunately supports because he even voted for the bill when he was still when he was even in the Congress back then. I think it's I think it's to me that just shows a display of politics on their part. But is DOMA going to be repealed? I hope so, because the government should be out of the whole marriage to business to begin with, and maybe this is another step towards that. But I don't know. Your call on this, Jim. D.
What, a Defense of Marriage Act? I don't know. I'm interested in registering partnerships beyond the states. I'm interested in people ignoring the government and getting married in pairs and triplets and other pairings and groupings, and I don't see how it's anybody's business except the people who are involved. I don't see where the state has a role in marriage. I understand the lawyer's perspective, which is that the state has an interest in marriage because somebody dies and then you have to probate the will and the other partner in the marriage gets some percentage of it. But I think that's basically a bullshit rationale for what was originally a racist tool, a tool of racism to prevent black women from marrying white men and prevent white women from marrying black men. I mean, we have to get back to the basic fundamental thing is the state is authoritarian, it's racist, sexist, it's militaristic, it's violent, it's aggressive, and I don't think we need any of it. So if the Defense of Marriage Act went to hell tomorrow, it wouldn't bother me, and if that were the if that were the first part of the state that went straight to hell and the rest of it was dragged down under with it, that would make my day.
Right, and I totally agree with you on that point. And this has been a great panel tonight. It's time to go for new rules. If you're a Hollywood actor who's banging two chicks while your wife, also a Hollywood actress, is not part of the fun, here's some free advice. Ask her to be a part of the fun. Don't exclude her. Demi Moore has decided to file for divorce from her husband, Ashton Kutcher, of 6 years due to reports of infidelity, such as fucking a 22-year-old model named Sarah Leal, who looks like she could pass as Britney Spears' long-hidden twin. She told the British paper The Sun We had sex twice. Everything felt natural. We were having a good time. One thing led to another. He was good, but it wasn't weird or perverted or creepy. I was attracted to him, and he was attracted to me. So Ashton is 33, and Demi is almost 50. Wow. Memo to Ashton. If you're balling a 22-year-old blonde and not your wife, perhaps you finally discovered that Demi's pussy has an expiration date. And if that's the case, maybe you should go for the younger chicks. They're fresher meat. New rule. Here's some sound advice to anyone under the age of 16 who goes to a movie theater to see Breaking Dawn Part 1. Don't go see Breaking Dawn Part 1. Ah, yes, the sweet aroma of 13 to 16-year-old girls going to the movies to see Rob Pattinson and Taylor Lautner's raging biceps. And Kristen Stewart's swollen stomach that can pop like a balloon at any given moment. These ladies seem to be laboring under the teenage delusion that they're going to marry either Edward or Jacob, or if they hate, both. That's not my pet peeve tonight. My pet peeve is when an announcement on the movie screen tells the audience not to put up their feet on the chair, leave their phones on, or even talk during the movie. Yet these adolescent chicks foaming at the prospect of wanting either Edward or Jacob's babies in their tummies break every single rule in the movie-going universe. This is a movie theater, not your bedroom where you get to masturbate while watching Twilight on your DVD and Blu-ray players. New rule on 3. If you're having problems with President Obama's ObamaCare law, and you don't want to pay for insurance or the penalties for not paying for it, especially when you know you can't afford it, fret no more. Walmart is here to the rescue. Just last week, the low-coster announced that it would offer a clinic at their stores the same way CVS and Walgreens have done it. These doctors at these Walmart-operated clinics would treat diabetes, hypertension, and other illnesses you can't even afford to pay. I can see it now. A customer going up to a cashier at checkout and saying, a pair of Fruit of the Loom, a box of Fruit of the Loom, a Kit Kat bar, and a bypass. 2-1 rule. Government propaganda.
I know.
I really hate that. For a strange reason, the system's been acting weird tonight, I guess. But anyway, if you're a government, probably, if you're a government school propagandist, and I mean teacher, and you're bullying minors in your own classroom, you should be fucking fired and have your head toasted on a fucking bonfire over it. A 14-year-old student named Cheyenne was bullied by her teacher, a.k.a. propagandist and teacher's aide. Propagandist in training, at Miami Trace Middle School in Washington Courthouse in Ohio. The girl recorded her teacher as abusing her, resulting in her parents taking action against the two evil fucks. Kelly Chaffins, the propagandist in training, told Cheyenne, "Don't you want to do something about that belly?" Cheyenne said, "Yeah." Then the bitch responded, "Well, evidently you don't, because you don't do anything at home. You sit at home and watch TV." And of course, my favorite part, memo to Christine Wilt and Chaffins: get the fuck out of the classroom. You don't belong in it. You shouldn't be teaching. Why are you teaching? You have no place in the classroom with any child at all. And finally, new one rule, Mitt Romney, Michelle Bachmann, Herman Cain, Newt Gingrich, Rick Perry, and Rick Santorum, who cheer on torturing and waterboarding Americans and even Muslims in the Middle East and assassinating American citizens because, as Ricky Perry says, this is war. We must save our young men's lives. This is what happens in war. Are fuckwads and disgusting reprobates. These people shouldn't be running for office. They should be in a mental ward for psychiatric evaluation. Taking pleasure in killing, maiming, torturing, including waterboarding, and even assassinating human beings, all because we must be tough on terrorism, because we need to put up a face on the war on terrorism, are evil, sick, and maniacal monsters who don't deserve to be labeled human at all. In the last 30 minutes of the untelevised portion of the GOP presidential debate at Wofford College in South Carolina on November 12th, the top-tier candidates, with the exception of Ron Paul and to a minor degree John Huntsman, have come out saying that assassinating American citizens and torturing and waterboarding victims are a good idea for the President of the United States to do in order to protect the lives of the American people. Please. As Ron Paul correctly pointed out, waterboarding and torture are illegal under U.S. and international law. These psychopaths want to make it legal so that they can use their religious and political zealotry to kill anyone at a whim and throw out the legal courts by keeping Gitmo open. So they can be tried by a military tribunal because they're now enemy combatants. Oh, wait, that used to be called prisoners of war. Romney and his vile, twisted, and sadistic goons are so disgusting that they, as Sheldon Richmond pointed out on his blog, want to set the Middle East afire and destroy everything in sight, because that's what their Christian God and Jesus would have them wanted them to do. They want to kill, 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 and yet these people have the fucking balls to call themselves pro-life. No, pro-life to them means protection of the unborn, so they can grow that goo up to be a conservative Christian Republican and call for war while clinging onto their King James Version of the Holy Bible and kill in the name of their God. And that's what Republicans like those sideshow freaks are all about. They profess hate. You a towelhead, an Islamo-fascist, hatred for the Arab who's also a Muslim. You a taco-eating spick, hatred for the Mexican. You weren't born with a silver spoon, hatred for the poor. You don't believe in our God, hatred for both the atheist and any spiritual or religious person who doesn't believe their way. If they had their way, they'd kill anyone who doesn't subscribe to their thinking. Oh, and pro-life for the unborn? Yep. Unless you live in the Middle East, you're an Arab and you pray to Allah. And for that, you get carpet bombed. All right, that's our show tonight. Thanks goes to Edgardo Peregrino, Jim Davidson, and Stephen Meier for appearing on this show. You can catch the podcast within 12 minutes after the airing of tonight's episode. That's all for tonight, folks. Thanks for listening. Good night. Jim, why don't you stick around because we'll talk for a few minutes and so we can go over a few things. Other than that, okay. Thanks a lot, guys.
All right. Fun talking to you. Later.
Okay. Thanks a lot, Edgardo. And let's see.
All right. Thank you.
Yep. Jim, you still there? Jim left.
I'm right here. How's it going, Todd?
Good. What did you think of tonight's show?
Great show. Mr. Davidson was unhinged there for a little while. That was interesting to hear. I liked it. It was awesome.
Yeah. We had some minor technical difficulties, but other than that, I think this is well, despite that. So think of our discussions on, the discussions on the debates.
All the discussions are really good tonight. The debates are pretty much a waste of time, in my opinion. Obviously, Ron Paul gets screwed over every time, but he's actually, running as a major party candidate, which supports that same system that he is getting screwed over by. So it's kind of hard for me to feel a lot of sympathy.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Man. I think Ron has been given the short end of the stick here, so that's the sad part of it. I think there's a lot of great stuff coming out of this. So, but I really have to say that this is really showing how important it is for us to be more vigilant than ever, if you know what I mean. So we need to. Oh, go ahead.
No. It's just it's a mess, and I stopped watching it because I'd never get anything out of it other than frustrated at the lies that pretty much everyone up on the dais is.
Well, I don't know if you're aware of this, but Sheldon Richmond came out with an excellent article that's posted on his blog, in which he basically called out Mitt Romney for being an evil bastard, and he's a reprobate, and they're all reprobates, with the exception of Ron, and to a minute degree, John Huntsman on the war issue. I mean, he's not exactly a libertarian, not like Ron, but still, he's better than the alternative, in the usual sense of the word, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
But your thoughts on the Occupy movement? Your thoughts on that? I thought it got very heated with Stephen Jim over the whole Occupy thing.
Yeah, it was a little heated on there. As far as the Occupy movement goes, it'll be interesting to see if anything long-term comes out of it. Obviously, it's a very weird group of people all thrown together into one, kind of the same group of people who were protesting against the Iraq war. As that buildup was going, they were all brought together by one single issue, but if you were to try to pull them on other important issues, you're probably going to find a lot of division among the ranks. So it'd be interesting to see if anything whatsoever cohesive and useful comes out of it long term, aside from what we're getting right now, which is some attention to the issue. But I don't see anything serious or concrete actually happening yet.
Right. I just think right now, the way it's looking, I think the Occupy movement is going to be here for a while, and it's going to be a while. So I think that we're going to be seeing some good coming out of it. So it's going to be interesting to see how this all pans out at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think it's. Yeah, just a year from now, I'm just interested in seeing what we've got out of it. Hopefully we get more out of it than the Tea Party, which has given us freaking Michelle Bachmann and her insanity. I'd like to see something better than that.
Well, you saw like I said, you saw the 30 minutes of the untelevised portion on the net, right? Where they went after Ron Paul when he brought up the point about that the president has now been given unconstitutional authority to basically assassinate American citizens, that torture is illegal under international and U.S. law. And, of course, Rick Perry, of all people, had to go into this big diatribe against Paul, saying, well, if these are tools that are going to help us protect young men's lives, well, then that's exactly what we need to use, because this is war. This is what happens in war. And if it means protecting American lives, then I'm all for that. And I'm like, you evil bastard. I mean, listening to Mitt Romney's rhetoric on economic sanctions, listening to what Herman had to say on the subject, Herman Cain, that is, it was just puking. I mean, I just wanted to puke my dinner a number of times.
Well, don't puke your dinner up, man. Food's too expensive right now. You can't afford to have to eat twice every time. Maybe change your meal time. Yeah, these guys are a bunch of apologists. They're as far as I'm concerned, the biggest bunch of useless people I've ever encountered.
I just think they're disgusting. They're maniacal. They're twisted. They're sadistic, aren't they? And we're talking about tonight about the whole thing regarding supposedly Occupy DC being violent and whatnot. I mean, these are the candidates who would love to see these people thrown in jail. Now your thoughts on Obamacare. I don't think Obamacare is going to go away. I'd stay for a while. Maybe it will. Maybe if Ron Paul does get elected, and I don't think he will, but let's just say, for argument's sake, that he does get elected, do you think he'll get anywhere with killing that law?
Probably not, because it relies on Congress, and you've got both of the cowardly parties running each of the houses. So, no, it's not going to go anywhere. The only hope that he would have is through support of lawsuits that will chip away at key provisions over time. So, that's what's really going to happen here. When they start actually enforcing it and screwing people over, then the lawsuits start, and then they start getting things ruled unconstitutional. But it's going to take a lot of people getting hurt first, and then the lawsuits starting before that's going to happen. I don't see anything legislatively on the horizon that's going to fix this. I think it's all going to happen in the courtroom.
Right. I just don't understand why Jesse Ventura is looking to run for president while trying to get dual citizenship for here in the U.S. Maybe that's a fallback position in case his plans fall apart, but I just think he's wasting his time. I don't know about you, but I think that's what's going on here.
Yeah, Jesse Ventura, he's an interesting guy. He's a smart guy. I was talking about a Navy SEAL. He's highly educated, very intuitive, but I think it's a big waste of time. And maybe part of it is also that he's trying to help sell his recent book a little bit better as well, and of course his television show. So I just question how serious he actually is about all of it and how much of it is about pushing the book sales up. We'll see.
Right. Other than that, I think tonight's show has been pretty good. Pretty good, to say the least. So.
Oh yeah, outstanding.
Now next week we won't be doing a show. because we have our night off. But we have our week off because of Thanksgiving. But we're back on the 3rd. Are there any guests that you want for for the December 3rd show?
Let's see. Since it's starting a new season, maybe we can ask Angela Keaton if she wants to come on again. It's been a little while since we had her on.
She won't talk to me, but maybe you can talk to her and get her on the show, and we'll see if we can work it out. Huh?
They quit pissing off my favorite guest.
Oh, well, okay. I'm trying to, I was hoping that maybe she and I could patch things up to, just, work together, I know one good person that we could have on the show, but I've been trying to get him on the show. Radley Balco is a guest, for an interview, but I haven't heard back from him. I guess one person I would like to have on the show to talk to and get his thoughts would be Roderick Long. What do you think?
Yeah, both of them would be good guests. I actually met Radley a couple times. It's been years, but since we were both in the D.C. area, I've met him at a Libertarian blog meetup. That was actually pretty cool. He's a nice guy, and I met him at some Cato events. I think he'd be a good guest. I think Roderick would be very interesting as well. So I'd say, yeah.
Oh, and let's not forget, I would love to get Sheldon on the air if I can get him on a show, like a time slot like this, because usually he doesn't do shows on the weekends or anything like that. But if we can get him on the air, that would be priceless.
I think I offered him once before, and it was too late. Maybe we can, if we can't get him to do the 10 o'clock time slot, do a one-off with just him, or a 1-hour interview or something.
Yeah, and maybe you can do we can work around your schedule where you and I can actually come together, for a special show or something. That would be fantastic. But I would love to see him on the air and get his thoughts on the whole 2012 race and the Occupy movement, as well as the whole economic situation with the regulations and also with the impending war with Iran. Of course, his thoughts were very prophetic in so many ways. But anyway, you have any final thoughts you want to share before we go, or?
Well, I just said if anybody who's listening who's a part of either the Tea Party movement or Occupy Wall Street, I just challenge you to look beyond what your current issue is. What are you going to come away from this long term with? Please tell me, if you're part of the Tea Party, that you've got more to offer than Michelle Bachmann, please. I'm not impressed, guys. And Occupy Wall Street, what do you got beyond breaking some windows right now and squatting on public property and sometimes private property? What's your long-term goal, guys? I want to hear from you.
I would definitely love to get an occupier on the show and interview him. Any one of the occupiers, if we could just nab. Maybe I can get something from Michelle 7 or something. That would be fantastic.
That'd be great.
Oh, yeah. Other than that, I think we've accomplished our objective tonight, and we are out of here. See you after Thanksgiving break, guys. Have a good have a good holiday. Enjoy Thanksgiving. Oh, by the way, folks, this upcoming Monday is my birthday, my 38th birthday. So I will be 38 years old officially, and technically tomorrow because it's already Sunday. So,
well, happy birthday.
Yeah, thank you. 38 years old, almost 40. So this is going to be. I'm looking forward to another 30 to 40 years of bringing about more liberty to the movement, to the liberty movement and beyond. So here's to it. All right. See you guys on December 3rd, and keep smiling. We'll have a new website up by then. Mike Hoskins and I are working on that. See ya, everybody. Bye.